So, hey there, everybody. If you've been on pins and needles, you weren't alone. I think both of us were trying to figure out how to get into this room. And now we're happy to welcome the rest of you too. I see that you're coming in quickly. You know what I'm doing here. I'm using up oxygen until you all enter. So as you take your seats wherever you are and get something nice to drink and enjoy yourselves, I want to introduce myself and then, of course, most importantly, introduce our guest of honor today. My name is Jay Frost. I'm the host of the Philanthropy Mastermind series, brought to you by DonorSearch. You won't be hearing much about them today, simply because they provide a platform where I can be in a candy store and have great conversations with people like the guest today, Gayle Roberts. But it does mean that if you want to see this content later, people always ask about that. You'll be able to find a copy over on the DonorSearch site at donorsearch.net under the resources tab. There'll be a copy with all the other sessions we've done this year and all of last year as well. So I hope you'll enjoy that. You'll find them once again under the resources tab at donorsearch.net. You can also sign up for future programs there as well. So I hope you'll do that. Now, as far as today's program is concerned, I definitely would love to welcome you into the chat area. I know we have a few people who have said hello. Please join them. Just say hi. So thank you very much. Hello for saying hello. We appreciate that. And Kara. So the rest of you just come in there and say howdy if you would, and let us know where you're coming in from, maybe which organization you're with, whatever you think will help us to tune in to your interests and needs and maybe your locale. That would be a lot of help. And then in terms of questions, I really want to encourage you to utilize Q&A. And the reason I say that is because it's quite possible we'll miss your questions if they're in the chat. And I don't want to miss anything you have to say. So use chat as a place to play and use the Q&A as a place to make sure that your issues are addressed throughout. Now, if you don't know why you're here, I'm sorry, but you're still going to have a great time. This is a conversation, of course, about this issue about accelerating and maximizing fundraising with ChatGPT. And I'm really excited to do this session with the person who inspired it by her incredible posts on LinkedIn. And that is, as you can see, Gayle Roberts, who is the Chief Development Officer at Larkin Street Youth Services. So Gayle, thank you for sitting patiently as I blabbed. It's really great to see you here.
Jay, I am so flattered. I've been following you for many years. And yes, I have a social media addiction, and I try to channel it for good on LinkedIn. And I'm a little intimidated or surprised to be asked to be on this conversation today after yesterday's amazing panel that you had with 4 experts from the field. I learned a lot from that one myself, and I'm still learning, but yeah, I'm happy to share with the lessons that I'm learning with folks on this call. And I'm seeing they're everywhere from Hawaii to Florida to my home state of Minnesota, here in California, where I am now. And I just want to say hello to everybody and welcome.
So since you name checked the session yesterday, I'll just quickly reference that we had a panel that was really put together by Nathan Chappell, who's over at DonorSearch AI, consisting of a number of people that I think we both have admiration for in the field. Starren Bird, Barbara O'Reilly, Nashid Kassam over at Kila, great people who are innovators. And they were talking about ChatGPT and its perils and pitfalls, so to speak. But much of that conversation was kind of at a 30,000 foot level, really helpful, really interesting. That recording is available for people. But what I loved about what you had posed in your posts, and then you provided in a ChatGPT generated agenda for this meeting, is the practical application of this stuff. And you found ways to generate revenue, or at least generate activity towards revenue at the organization, which is pretty remarkable, because I think a lot of people are either viewing this stuff as a gimmick, or they're not looking at the potential risks of using it in a very practical, informed way like you've been doing. Before we go even there, though, if you don't mind, would you mind telling us a little bit about not only your own background before you got there, but also about Larkin Street, for those who don't know the organization?
Yeah, why don't I start with Larkin Street, because it's really is my heart. Larkin Street Youth Services is located in San Francisco Bay Area. We're nearly 40 years old, and I'll come back to that in a minute, because there is a ChatGPT story there. And our mission is to end youth homelessness, and we serve about 1,500 youth every year. We've helped over 75,000 youth get off the streets. and we have almost 300 staff people here. I have 13 people on my development team, raised $10.5 million last year, on track to exceed that this year. We leverage smart technology, artificial intelligence, workflow automation, and data analytics. We've actually been using AI for a couple of years now and some other platforms. Can talk about that if you'd like. And ChatGPT is just the latest thing that we're exploring, and I have a lot of opinions about it, and I'm happy to talk to about it. As far as myself, I'm, as I mentioned, the Chief Development Officer here. I've been doing fundraising for over 20 years. I've been the head of many organizations. I'm on the local Association of Fundraising Professionals board. I used to be the chair of the other fundraising trade association in town. And before I got into the development field, I was a marketing professional. So I'm an accidental techie. That's not how I got started in the field. I wasn't the database administrator. I was a grant writer. At my core, I'm a writer. And that's why ChatGPT is something that I'm curious about, because I really see it as a research and editing and copy editing tool.
That is going to be a really exciting place to go, because I think that's where, for those of us who got our start, or our fascination with communications through writing, that we both have an interest in ChatGPT and other AI tools because of that, but we also probably have this kind of complicated relationship with them. They're not writers, but they can be helpful to that process. And once again, they're drawing from a lot of data out there. In the case of ChatGPT, it's data that goes back to, I think, to December of 2021. So it doesn't have everything available to it, and it certainly doesn't have everything within it that we would have in our own heads as writers. Actually, Gayle, it might also be helpful if you wouldn't mind kind of introducing ChatGPT in the context of all this for those who don't know anything about it at all. Maybe how you came to know it and how you explain it to others.
Okay. So the disclaimer, I'm not a data research scientist. I am a case study of one. So just as with ChatGPT, you should always check the answers. I will say the same for me. So broadly speaking, artificial intelligence has been a hope and a dream for over half a century or more. But in the last 5 years, there's been some remarkable progress made. If I understand the technology correctly, like you said, it basically has the entire internet and a lot of other data as well. Through the end of 2021, you can input into it other information, and I can talk more about how I'm doing that. And it has crawled all that information, categorized it. It has what it calls it does attention, and it basically is able to learn language, and it's able to estimate what will come next in a word or a sentence or a paragraph or a document.
Right.
And it does it very well, but it also makes mistakes. And ChatGPT is very much a beta product. If I understand correctly, it was released in about 2 weeks after somebody made that decision at OpenAI, and later on they had half of it bought by Microsoft for 10 million. So it's a commercial product looking for revenue and for markets. But OpenAI, which is the company that runs the back end of it, they have lots of different interfaces into it, or APIs. ChatGPT is just one interface into it. It's the really easy one because it's based on like what we call a chatbot. But there are other interfaces into it that you can do image creation, a lot of other things. And there are also a lot of other competing products out there, or that will be coming available. So I don't think we should all be focused on just ChatGPT. This is about how do we leverage artificial intelligence to automate our workflows, to improve our research, to improve our donor relationships and communications, and all the things that we do as a fundraisers.
It strikes me just talking with you about this, and then looking at the image in back of you, that you're in the middle of the world that's developing these products and tools and services, and you're also working with the most vulnerable people in a place like that at Larkin. That's what is that like for you?
To be honest, there's a little bit of cognitive dissonance. I mean, we could probably spend the entire hour
Right.
about the hidden background in technology and what's required to keep it online. There's a great book out there called The Atlas of AI. I can't remember the author's name, but she talks about the need to mine lithium and have the great power sources. And it's a global technology that creates and enables not only artificial intelligence, but all of the tools that we use these days. And it's rather hidden from us. And here in San Francisco Bay Area, though, a lot of it is actually rather present because we've had for 20 years a very strong economic boom, which has created vast income inequality. And it has been great for some people, but for other people, it's been a real struggle. And the rates of homelessness are quite significant here in San Francisco. And now coming out of the pandemic, our local economy is not coming back because tech is basically all remote work. So unlike some of the other major metropolitan areas around the country, which have maybe financial capitals in New York or more mineral and rich capitals in other places where people have come back to work in the South, not here in the Bay Area. Maybe 2/3 of the people are still working remotely. So economically, we're having some big challenges because of the boom cycle of technology. And that's what Larkin Street is on the ground trying to solve. So it is a double-edged sword, this technology and the use of it. But I think I would be on the side of, if I had the magic wand, maybe I'd go back a couple of years and shut it all off. But it's here to stay. And I'm going to try to leverage it for good in the ways that I can.
Wow. Well, if somebody from OpenAI is sitting in on this or watches it later, we're not advocating for your closure tomorrow. We know you're
No,
here.
no, not that. I would be more like thoughtful guidelines and policies around
Yeah.
the world.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. That's one of the challenges with this. I know people rush headlong into it without thinking about why we're doing something and how to do it well, and then understand the implications, especially with the people that we're working to help. And again, drawing from that great little agenda that you generated directly from there, you talk about this next piece, which is kind of natural. This is our own form of natural language processing, I guess. So as thing leads to thing, or way leads on to way, as Frost might say. Then the next section was about the need for AI in nonprofit fundraising. You just alluded to some of that in that statement, but you also talked about a little bit earlier when you talked about all the different technical innovations you're using there. Another thing strikes me before you jump into that, which is that you are working again with particularly vulnerable people, but you're raising a fair amount of money to do it, to serve these populations, and but you're using a lot of technology. There might be other people in the social services sector who are thinking, before we even begin the rest of this conversation, oh my gosh, how do they come up with the resources, the knowledge, the insight, the plan to be able to do these things? This is all pre-chat GPT. You've been using a lot of these services. So how did you go down this route in the first place to
Yeah.
decide to do these things? And then how did you find the strength, the time, and the resources to do so?
It's a bit of pulling it all together in different ways that we can, a little bit of a house of cards, to be honest, like most nonprofits.
Mm,
What I am very fortunate is I joined Larkin Street about 4 years ago. April 1st will be my anniversary date.
mm.
And it was already a sizable organization. Our budget then was 23 million. Right now it's 33 and a half. So it's grown 10
Wow.
million in just
Okay.
4 years. And the revenue, we've increased it about 50% on the contributed revenue in that period of time as well.
Mhm.
Um, they had already adopted Salesforce as a platform for the CRM before I got here. And obviously Salesforce is one of our partners, and there was a financial incentive for us to move to Salesforce, but Salesforce also is a extremely powerful platform that can, do just about anything you want it to do.
Mm.
But it's not for small shops, not even, I don't think, for mid-sized shops. You need to have the technical support to operate it because it's not an all-in-one solution. But that gave us a platform off of which to expand and grow. And so we've been doing that in the last couple of years under my watch. I think probably the thing that's most interesting for this conversation is we use Raise from Gravity, which is a Major Gifts AI-enabled platform, and it helps us manage our Major Gifts pipeline. I get pinged every morning with a draft email to send to a couple of donors, either as a thank you or as a stewardship. And on a monthly basis, I get who I should go out and reach to and do meetings with. And that is integrated with our CRM along with iWave, which we use for data analytics. And so it ranks, prospects in my major donor pipeline and basically tells me who I should talk to. And it's not just me, but other members of my team. I finally hired a major gifts officer, and I also have some board members who are part of that system. It's allowed us to move faster, to think smarter, and to raise more money on the major gift side. I like to say about that system or ChatGPT, I mean, it's smart, but it's not that smart. There's always a human checkpoint. It doesn't do anything automatically with any of our donors. I get the recommendation, and then I look at it and I check in the database to see if I agree or not. And if I do, I pull the trigger, but if I don't, I delete it. But having worked with that now for 19, 20 months, gave us, I think, more familiarity or ease of working with something like ChatGPT.
Now, and those are just a few of the tools that you use, and I know there are others too, and people are already asking about that in the chat. So we'll go back to revisit that. But maybe a good vantage point to start this next phase of our conversation, as it suggested, actually, is why do AI at all? I mean, a lot of the tools that you just mentioned are good services from kind of legacy approaches. So, for example, using some form of machine learning, perhaps, to generate communications tools, which accelerated our ability to talk to donors, which is always a good thing, because for those who don't, obviously talking to donors on a regular basis is a good thing to do, and that's one of the things you do that has been so important to Larkin Street. And then some of the tools are similar to other prospect research tools in the sense that they are mining existing data. So now with AI, things like what we're looking at with this, which is next generation, very different from the gravities and other things of the past. Why do this? Why is this? What is the way that how are you looking to accelerate and maximize fundraising through chat and similar things like Bard and others?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's any nonprofit, and particularly the development professional, who's not feeling the pressures of the economy right now with the prospects of potentially long-term inflation here locally, as I mentioned, San Francisco, an economic downturn, the need for increasing services, whether you're in human and social services like we are, or whether you're in the arts or wherever. And there's always a demand to do more with less. The hope and a prospect for all of these tools, whether it's the data analytics, the workflow automation, we use HubSpot, by the way, for that, or artificial intelligence with ChatGPT or something else, is it speeds up the process and allows us to hopefully, if we are well managed and well structured, to spend more time actually with donors. And so, I can turn around a grant proposal in 1/5 the time with the assistance of ChatGPT as a writing assistant or any other thing. You kind of joked about the agenda I sent you. ChatGPT did create that for me. I collaboratively did it, but I did it during the call yesterday on that webinar because I was freaking a little bit out. Like, these people really know their stuff. And Nathan mentioned he had a website. And there were 4 or 5 articles on there about artificial intelligence and nonprofit fundraising. So during the call, I stripped a text out of that. I threw it into ChatGPT and I said, write me an agenda based on that. And it did. And then I edited it. And then I took the notes from the call yesterday, I added it into that. And I said, okay, write me an updated agenda. It did. I looked at it, I tweaked it a little bit, and I sent it to you at the end of the meeting. Did it in real time while on the call, finding resources online, having my collaborative partner do most of the heavy lifting. I edited it. I added my own voice to it. It was done. It was free.
So, and because nobody can look at it because it's on my phone. What did you see about that worked well about it? What were the areas that you improved by, by your editorial, in making sure your voice was represented as well as the facts
Yeah.
were
I
correct?
mean, I went through a couple of different versions of it, and I wanted it to be concise because I
Right.
also turned it into a PowerPoint in case we needed that. And, PowerPoint now has AI-enabled design functions in it. So I use that as well. And I created a PowerPoint in maybe 30 minutes.
Hmm.
Um, and, I'm not a designer, but, it was easy. That was it. And it was like, it's like sitting, I think of ChatGPT as a graduate level research assistant that I can collaborate with and
Hmm.
communicate with, ask questions and give guidance to. Um, also, it's good at first drafts. It's really good at first
Right.
drafts. And so it can create those things really fast. Like I had another project we were under a tight timeline. A funder wanted a report turned around quickly, and it was an annual self-assessment of our organization. And my grant writing team is all fairly new. I've hired all three of them in the last 7 months. And I've been here and I knew what had gone on for the last 12 months. So I took my board development reports for the last 12 months. I threw them in the ChatGPT, and then I had it answer the specific questions, finance, HR, operations. And it gave me a rough first draft in all of those areas, 20 minutes.
Right.
And then I just copy edited those, reviewed them with the division directors of each of those departments to make sure it was accurate. But it would have taken days to do that first draft, and it would have been really hard for my team members who have not been here that long or don't have access to, at the chief level, to the operations across the agency. With ChatGPT, it was simple.
There's so much to unpack even in that you mentioned a couple of things that were really interesting, and one of which is knowing which questions to ask. So if we think of it as the graduate assistant, right?
If there's anything take away today, it's what they call prompt engineering. You got to know what the right questions to ask. And here's the takeaway, folks. You ask the system what questions to ask.
Okay, talk more about that. This is really important. Yeah.
Yeah. So you really have to put your editorial hat on. I did actually used to edit a newspaper back in the day, so maybe I do have some skills for that. But who's your audience? What's your outcome? What voice do you want to have? Those are the things you tell the system with what they call prompts.
Mm-hmm.
But the trick is that, at least for me so far, is at the end of those prompts, I go like, do you understand what I'm asking for, period? And what additional prompts am I missing, or what additional questions do you need to know to create the outcome I want? And it will go, yes, I understand what you're wanting. Can you please tell me more about the audience? Can you please tell me more about your outcomes that you want? And you ask it to ask you for the clarifying questions. So before you ask it to even create anything, you're having a conversation with it, just like a writing partner.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same conversation you'd have with a grant writer you hired as a contractor.
Right, absolutely. Well, the thing that's interesting about that also is that that's that's a question I always ask if I'm doing feasibility studies, like what question haven't I asked you? So it seems natural that we would be using this partner, this iterative partner, even though it's a machine, to sharpen the blade of our questions.
Yeah.
And that's really important. But also, another piece of this that at least that I tuned into is that you took your content and you put it through this
Yeah,
process.
that's the other thing. You can start with a couple of questions and it will pull generic contract from its
Mm-hmm.
brain or whatever it is. But if you feed it content that you've created in the past, let's just talk about a grant proposal.
Mm-hmm.
You feed it the text from 5 general operating grant proposals. Then you give it the outline with the word count of the new grant proposal, along with who the funder is and what their background is. And you ask it, what else do you need to know? And then when you finish that process, you'd say, please write me a first draft. And it will, to the word count.
And that's something funny about that.
In 30 seconds.
People are really responding to this too. So it sounds like some of you either haven't used this much or that you haven't used it in these ways. And I think this is important. There are a couple of notes here though, and Gayle, I know you've experienced this. I took something recently where I used another AI tool, which is otter.ai. So I'll do exactly. So I'll do an interview with someone, a donor. I'll then have that automatically transcribed. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. Then I'll take that text and I'll do things with it. But that's a very cumbersome process. And so I tried to see if I could take some of those things and drop those into ChatGPT just to see what would happen. And if it would take enough of the text, well, I thought, well, maybe I can drop a whole bunch in there. The version that most of us have access to for free, at least I haven't found, I should be asking if this is true for you. I haven't found that I can drop in that much. So the things that you're dropping in must have been fairly concise in order to generate the next version.
So I do have the $20 a month version now.
Okay.
It doesn't crash quite as often. It still has the same text limitations. So you just take your grant report or your transcript and you cut it into pieces and you enter a couple of pages at a time.
Right.
And as long as you stay within the same chat, it has access to that. It won't be able to reference information that you add into different chats. Now, one of the things I find really challenging about it is that it after you enter data a couple of different times, it seems to forget the initial instructions that you gave it. It's almost like there's a different chatbot that gets queued up. So you have to remind it again what your initial instructions were. But I have seen online that there are people who know how to do Python, the computer programming, where they can automate adding text into the system, and so they go away, have a coffee, and they come back and, their whole document's uploaded. But I've done exactly what you do. My other social media addiction is YouTube. And so I like to watch videos, but I don't want to watch an hour-long, interview. So I pull the transcript off of YouTube and I run it into ChatGPT. I usually have to do 20 minutes at a time, 20 minutes on the segments, right? But that takes 10 seconds to pull off of YouTube and enter into ChatGPT. I enter those three things and then I tell it to summarize it. And it tells me what the YouTube interview was, and I get those summary in 3 to 4 minutes. And then I go like, well, if I want to actually watch the thing. Yeah, it's remarkable. Right now I'm working on a policy and procedural document for my team because we need more internal documentation. Did the exact same thing. I found 6 of them online. I had a collaborative conversation for a couple of hours actually to create the outline. And then I had it write the chapters. And now I have different people on my team reviewing the chapters to make sure, to customize them for us. But I got a 30-page policy and procedural handbook out of it within a day. I would say it's, it definitely is a draft, but there's nothing generically wrong about it. It's just not specific to us. So, I have to update it with our gift acceptance policy and other things. But yeah, fast, speedy. I've done a capital campaign plan draft in it. I've updated our annual fund planning in it. I run emails through it to donors. And, a lot of people are complaining that language feels stilted, but that's because you haven't learned how to prompt it yet and ask the right questions. It can create any tone you want. And then ultimately you copy edit it and tweak it a little bit and put your own voice in it. But, people are going to probably get upset with this, but I wrote in a eulogy for a close friend of mine who was in a women's group. And I leveraged ChatGPT to help me write the eulogy. And then I customized it to make my personal voice.
Yeah, can you talk about why was that important for you? Because you're right, some people will just automatically start judging, but there was a reason why you did that. And it may actually be analogous to the rest of what we do. You have to get into an emotional space. It's hard to get started. What was that like for you?
So this is a bit of a vulnerable share, but there's woman who was in a women's group that I used to facilitate. She was violently murdered here in the Bay Area. It's got national news. People might know about it. I'll leave it at that. And I knew a part of her life, a segment,
Mhm.
and I saw her just 3 weeks ago. And um, I wanted to be able to speak to the broaderness of her life. So I pulled a lot of text down from other people's writing
Mhm.
to make sure that I was honoring who she was as a full human being. Um, and that helped me source the fullness of her life. And then, yeah, I edited it and I added what I know about her personally and some other things. But you know, if I had been asked to write that eulogy or testimony, I would have done the same research. I would have called people, I would have talked to folks, but I was able to do it in an expedited way because it's artificial intelligence. It's smart, but not that smart, but it helped in the process.
Um, each of these, most of what you're talking about is once again asking good questions,
Yeah.
knowing the limitations,
Mhm.
feeding information rather than relying on the information that exists before December 21, and hoping that it gets it right. Just for a second, not to knock this system or this approach, but just to understand the vulnerabilities we have
Yeah,
within
we
it
should
or
talk
to
about
understand its
those.
limitations. Can you talk about a couple of the times when it just didn't work that well? At least in the current version, it didn't work for a particular purpose. So we can figure out where are the best places to apply the technology.
Well, I actually think if anybody was reading the news today, ChatGPT, or excuse me, OpenAI is powering Bing's new search engine,
Right.
and it's gone off on a rails.
Right.
Right? Um, and so this is beta software. It will tell you things that it thinks are true, but are not necessarily true, particularly when it comes up with like trying to footnote something. It's not good at math, can't add very well. It's a language model. Um, and so it, and it only knows basically through 2 years ago. So it doesn't know about current politics, for example,
Right.
or current economics. And so it really needs to be fact checked. Now, and then there's also there's a risk of implicit bias. You know, with all of these huge language models, you and me as users, we basically have no control over how they're constructed, what kinds of implicit biases are in them, because they do have biases.
Hmm.
And for those of us who are working as, in the nonprofit sector, trying to confront a lot of these things, it's important for us to be mindful of that. Um, because it's easy to start to think that it is very smart and it knows what it's doing because it does know a lot of things, and then it will make mistakes or it'll tell falsities, and you won't catch it if you're not being observant. The other thing that's really important is obviously donor privacy and donor trust. And there was a lot of talk about that yesterday, and so I don't need to go into it a lot. But it's unclear, I think, to all of us where the information that we put into it goes to. And, it's supposed to be safe and secure, but we don't really know. And technology in a general, we've all seen, major uh, security breaches in lots of systems over the years. And then the other one is really, how do donors feel like if they think they're being communicated by a chatbot? And this is why I would be strongly advocating you just use this to write drafts. I think that's what one of your panelists said yesterday. And that as an end user, you're editing and you're approving everything that goes out.
Yeah.
It's not ready for automated prime time mass emails by far.
Right. And just to add to what you're saying, for those who haven't been experiencing it yet, the errors that this can make, besides potential mathematical errors, and I definitely don't have the understanding to know why those happen, but in terms of the other kinds of editorial errors that might occur or research errors, is that it's drawing from information that it has, And but sometimes maybe that information becomes conflated. And so unless we're paying careful attention, like you've clearly done, if we just took that and just popped it into something, we could be drawing the wrong conclusions. I mean, for example, demographics of an area might say, well, this is what it looked like in this area in the 2019 census, but in fact, maybe it's looking at two different sets of data as it does that, and so you end up with this kind of Frankenstein's monster of data. So we really have to be mindful that the answer, it's not Google. We can't use this like Google or even or as Bing is trying to do, I guess, right?
Yeah. I think that's where we're at right now. I mean, once again, I'm just one person, but this stuff is improving rapidly.
Hmm.
And there will be a time when I think we can have a lot more trust in it. And that's why I really like putting in pre-written materials for revisions and
Sure.
rewrites, because then it knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. I did an experiment recently. I'm wondering if you've done anything like this where I did want to find out if there were examples similar to an organization I was working with. And so I put in very specific kinds of information to see if there were examples of organizations like that in similar demographic areas that had a capital campaign or a great sustaining giving program or planned giving or something like that. And I then got information out of it, which was terrific. And I wasn't able to confirm it. And I think not because it was factually incorrect, but because the information was no longer displayed on those websites today, but it was available back in
Yeah,
in 2018 or 2014. And unless I use the way back, right, which is another thing that some
I,
people may
I
know
use
or
that
not,
too.
then there'd be no way for me to know, is this true? Is it making it up? I mean, so I don't know if you've run into that where you're looking at information and then it's difficult to confirm.
That hasn't been really my experience yet, but I've had, like I said, fairly limited experience, and I'm working mostly with the data that I have internally.
Right.
So, whether it's my own correspondence, doing revisions to maybe a marketing materials that one of my team members has drafted, some materials that I'm creating for the board. And like I said, this policy handbook that I'm trying to create for internally. Um, I think the other thing, that should be flagged is how do we, it's one thing to have a tool, but it's another thing to have a team that's using a tool or,
Mm.
change culture. Things have been moving very fast. It's kind of why I had that little glib statement earlier. I'd like to slow things down. But I don't think that's an option. But so like yesterday, we all read Allison Fine and Beth Kenter's new book, The Smart Nonprofit. And I did that explicitly. And some of my team are on the call today. I mean, they know this because I wanted to have a conversation with all of them around what their comfort level is with this. Just because I'm the boss and I have a comfort level around it, it doesn't mean that, I can force everybody to use it and, you know, to a way that's equitable
Hmm.
and embraced, and also to recognize what my own blind spots are. So I think there's a real conversation that needs to be had within organizations, not just development teams, but organizations as a whole around, you know, do you want to be on the bleeding edge? How do you want to integrate this or not? I mean, I agree with Allison and Beth. It's not if, it's when that you're going to be using these tools. But I think that the human process of building culture and support around these is as important, if not more, than learning like how to do prompt engineering, because that's not hard. The hard part is managing people and processes and getting
Right.
buy-in and all that stuff.
And not everybody's in the same place. I mean, not just
Mhm.
about the technology, but also their relationship to their work or the message you're trying to communicate or the relationships between and among one another or with donors and supporters. What kind of, I wanted to ask you about that. What kind of uptake have you seen from members of your team, but also your board? So, as you said, here's one way that I've done this thing. Here's a document, I've edited it, but
Uh,
here it is. What do you think? What kind of conversations have you had, and have you gotten everybody to be kind of on the same page, so to speak?
I think my team members are all moving in the same direction. I would say some, we're all at different places. That's totally
Mhm.
natural. I have some who are definitely ahead of me. It's not a conversation I have had yet with my board per se. I
Mhm.
mean, I've been using this tool for a month and a half. Um, I have a lot of tech people on my board. I don't think any of them will be, I think some of them would be very interested to learn what we're trying to do here. They all, I think broadly speaking, they know that, we've been using Salesforce for a long time. They know about the use of Raise from Gravity. Um, do they know that I'm using HubSpot for marketing workflow automation? Probably not, but that's not actually a board decision. That's an operational thing that we're
Mhm.
choosing to do. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of where,
We have a bunch of questions that have come in, and some of them
yeah,
do take us from where we are into the rest of this conversation. So if you don't mind, I'll try to bring
yeah,
those in.
please.
And I'm sorry we can't actually hear your voices, but that's just the nature of this sort of thing. So if you haven't posed a question yet and one's burning for you, please put it in the Q&A. If you put it in the chat, we may miss it. So feel free to keep having that conversation. I can see it's active, but do put questions over here. The first one had come in a while ago. I'm just doing this sequentially from Yvette, who had asked about reflections on addressing staff concerns, which we were just talking about, but also specifically about addressing anxiety around job security. And just as a footnote for anybody of a certain age, like me, there was a time when some of these tools were seen as potentially risking someone's job. For example, in research, everybody talked about the profile button, and that would be true for a lot of the research services that they thought their jobs would disappear. If, in fact, it seemed like the jobs potentially evolved, that people had a chance to do what you just talked about with asking the right questions to get better answers. So, are you seeing anxiety within your shop or hearing from others in other shops about that?
I'm certainly hearing from others outside of my shop, on the interwebs. Uh, my personal opinion is kind of at the macroeconomic level. I mean, we're in
Mhm.
a period of low unemployment. We're going to be facing that for probably many years as boomers, retire, and the Xers, it's the smallest generation in many years.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm not worried about at the macro level around how this is going to, cause mass unemployment. When we talk about individual people's jobs, technology and automation has impacted more like blue collar and labor jobs in the past, whether it's the farm economy or other places. White collar jobs have been kind of off, haven't been impacted. I think that's going to change, particularly for entry level to mid level white collar jobs, including some people in nonprofits. But when it comes to fundraising and most of the nonprofit programmatic work, which is people centered, I don't see jobs disappearing personally. Like I said, not an economist, but I think the nature of some of the work is going to change, and that will change faster in some places than others. I mean, I would recommend that if you want, just be bold. If you want your resume to be current, being fluent in how to use artificial intelligence is a good thing. Um, and
Yes.
ChatGPT is not hard. I mean, really,
Right.
it's easy.
Right.
It's made that way. It's made to be easy. And so, you know, I'm not looking, and I don't foresee losing any of my employees. I'm going to be hiring more, if anything, because we're going to be raising more money and needing to talk to more donors and build those relationships. But the nature of the work might change. Instead of spending so long writing a first draft, that will be quicker. And yeah, 5 years from now, things might be very different from that. I don't know.
Yes, it's pretty fast moving,
Yeah.
this whole environment. We had a couple of kind of almost tactical questions just about your own usages and so forth. And one was you mentioned an integration for the donor outreach, and I'm trying to remember back to where that was. It was a question from Stacy. So Stacy, I might need a little more help to figure out where that was. And then anonymous, always my favorite person in any of these sessions. It said you talked about Salesforce. Do you have a CRM recommendation for small shop nonprofits?
I'm not going to, yeah, that's not my expertise area. I mean, there's some out there that I like, but I don't feel comfortable making those recommendations.
Sure.
And then as far the other question, I suspect that was around about Raise from Gravity. Was that?
Perhaps. Yeah, for donor outreach. So it sounds like it. Yes.
Yeah. So Gravity, Gravayty,
Yes.
unusual spelling.
Like gravy tie. Yes.
Yeah. And it got rebranded as called Raise now, but Gravity's
Oh,
the
that's right.
master company.
Mhm.
They focus primarily on serving educational institutions. We're one of their few social service organizations they work with, but they'd love to work with all of you. Um, and great customer support. I really like the software. I was not able, we didn't have the technical expertise at the time on my team to use Salesforce to really effectively manage the major donor pipeline. Sorry, somebody keeps trying to call me, and I should have turned my phone off.
It's not visible up here, so no problem for
Good,
us.
I'm glad. I didn't want to scream on everybody. I was not able to effectively use Salesforce manually I have 900 donors who have given $1,000 or more in the last 3 years. And, they're all prospects for a major gift. It was overwhelming. I needed something that could help automate that. And I tried to bring some volunteers in to help with that, but it didn't work. And then I found this software package 2 years ago. It integrates into Salesforce. We have a license with it that can see a certain segment of my donors. And it also integrates with our data analytics. It basically creates a weighted list of who's the best prospect in my pipeline. And it prompts me or my other solicitors on a regular basis to do outreach. And it has a pre-programmed outreach language that we write, and then we give it to it. And it learns as we edit it, but it's, like I said, it's not smart, but it's not that smart. And it also, so it helps with the outreach and keeps me kind of on a timely basis. It also does the stewardship. So when a major gift comes in, me or one of my solicitors, a board member or one of my team members gets pinged and also does the outreach. So it's not just through, our gift processing department. And so that's really been a game changer for us. And they've got some other tools and things as well that they offer, and they're going to be offering in the future. And I'm looking to be a long-term partner with them. I highly recommend them.
Sure.
Moderately priced, but the customer service is
And in
great.
fairness to all the other products and services out there, plenty of which, including at DonorSearch AI, which does not do the same thing as Gravity, I think these products are coming online fast and furiously. So I think you'll find, if this is anything like the world of screening was, because that was a world I knew very well in the past, that the price of all these things drops dramatically as we show interest and we help the vendors shape their products to our needs. So just to add to everything you're saying, when you find something that's great, you can use it. If you don't find what you want yet, they'll create it. You just have to know what you want. We have so many questions here. So Carly had said, do you have any concerns about security of data when putting into your own content? I know you talked about that a little bit. Have you had more thoughts about that?
I'm personally not worried. I mean, I'm putting in like a grant proposal or grant request. Right. I don't see that as necessary.
So just be thoughtful about what you ask, right?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's just a little unclear
Right.
where the data goes and, how secure it is. I mean, I don't think there's a tech firm that hasn't been breached at some time or another. And so,
Right.
we have a lot of security systems in place to keep our CRM safe. And so I keep firewalls between that data and the rest of the world. And I would not integrate ChatGPT with Salesforce, for example. I just wouldn't do that.
We did have a question here from Maria, who asked about helping with prospect research, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Gayle, but I'll just make one note for a friend of the of the show and a friend to most of us in the field of prospect research, that Helen Brown just released a post on this today, talking about AI and its and specifically ChatGPT. So I would encourage people to read that about the potentials and also the risks, and risk and rewards of using this particular tool for prospect research. But you listed all the other things that you had done, Gayle, from fundraising plans to individual proposals and solicitations and so forth. What about on the prospect research front? Have you been able to use it at all for that? And if so, what have you found?
I haven't used it for that. I'm sure that you could, but as you mentioned early on, it doesn't have current information. It's about 2 years out of date, or a year and a half or something like that. So you certainly could have it probably, if you give it some information about a donor, write a generic bio. But I haven't enough experience in that to just really give much advice yet.
We had a question from Justin earlier about Python because you made reference to it, and I think you also said that you're not necessarily an expert in Python.
I know.
So what I would suggest, Justin, is that we can, in addition to whatever you're about to say, Gayle, is that we can refer that question on to the people at DonorSearch AI because they have a certain amount of experience with this stuff. Nathan Chappelle and others, but we'll try to get that answer to you.
So as a side note, I asked ChatGPT to teach me Python, and it gave me the script that I would need to run that system. But I have an office computer and it's locked down. I don't have that kind of administrative access.
Right.
So I talked with my sysadmin about it. And he says, like, Gayle, no, you can't do that. But once again, it's really good at actually coding. It's supposed to be really good at coding.
Yes, and I've seen that too, and I also have not used the code. There are some great articles about this that we should put in a follow-up. We send out a follow-up to all of our sessions, a little note, and so I'll see if we can put in some links. And Gayle, if you have any links of things that you like to use, trusted sources, that we'd be happy to include that for that. We did have a couple questions and comments about something you said earlier, talking about ways that you had edited the language that came out of it. So one person had said, can you share how you ask questions differently to avoid stilted language and achieve a desired tone? And I've gone through this iterative process with it as well, but what have you found to make it, normal, human?
Well, you define to kind of describe the tone that you would want. So informal, friendly, engaging, supportive, these kinds of words will create a different output than the first draft, which is more journalistic. And I forget exactly. I saw some YouTube video. I'm going to forget the 2 words, but there was these in OpenAI. I think they have a term called temperature. When you go into what's called the playground, which is a different API to get access to it. And the temperature is, if it's hot or cold, is the more randomness, I believe. Somebody will probably correct me in the chat. And so, more randomness is another way to make it a little more human. But, what I do is I go in and I add the personal details about myself or the person I'm talking to. A lot of it's just the introductory kind of participles in front of sentences, shifting and changing those to make it more warm or informal. I find it needs, depending on what the output is, maybe 10 to 25% editing to make it more human. But you can get pretty close with the prompts. And the more, we become better at those prompts, and let's just be honest, for much of the work we're doing, like grant writing, this is business writing. This is not literature. It'll write poetry. It's bad poetry.
Very bad.
But a funding report to a foundation, yeah, easy.
Right. And so for anybody who wants a real thrill, pick your 2 favorite poets if you have them. If you don't, pick a couple and have one write somebody else's poem in the other's voice. That'll that'll tell you what some of the potential limitations are on the aesthetic side, right?
Yeah, I mean, if people are really bored and want to like stalk my LinkedIn, over the last month and a half, you can see everything I've posted on that was with ChatGPT, and I've been exploring different tones and different meters. I wrote some bad poetry with it, and I'm learning.
Maybe this is a thought to kind of begin to close up on, which is that whenever there's a new technology or a new process, there is kind of a natural fear, and it breaks down into all these things from, is it going to take our job, to, am I going to be any good at it, or is it disrupting everything as we know it, life as we know it? But maybe there's another piece to this, and I think you made reference to it earlier, which is that maybe it's an opportunity that if we get to learn these tools and these processes, whatever they are, then maybe we can be stronger candidates for jobs. Maybe we can do our work better. You,
Yeah,
as a journalist who now is in this field writing proposals to get money so that people can sleep and eat. I
yeah.
mean, it's pretty basic stuff. You are using these tools really effectively. Let me ask you this question that probably is on everybody's mind. How can we ensure that we use these tools to be better at what we do? So not just as the tool, but how can we become better at what we do by using these kind of tools?
Um, Remain curious. I mean, I think that being open and curious and flexible and adaptable are critical human components to keep in this changing economy, the changing technology. Fear is not a help. A little bit of fear is not bad, but you don't want to get blocked by it. Um, this is the future. Um, and I think Nathan talked about it yesterday. There's a bit of a generosity crisis to drop his book. In any of these kinds of situations that we're facing as fundraisers, the things we should go back to are the core values of building relationships with our donors, and promoting the impact of gifts. Stewardship is so key these days, and not let the tools take over and distract us from the work that we know that we're good at. But like, do anybody on the call really want to spend more time in the back office, or revising the third draft on a grant letter, a grant proposal, rather than actually talking to a program officer? I don't think so. This is a way for us to get out ahead and be in our community.
That's great advice, even if we weren't talking about ChatGPT, that's for sure. And but it's also a good pep talk, because many of us perhaps use everything in the way of technology, including things like Zoom, to sometimes avoid doing what you do every day for the community that you serve. So I really appreciate that you're willing to take some time to talk about it here. Thank you, Gayle. Thank you for also talking about it so much on LinkedIn. So if people want to learn more about you and Larkin Street, et cetera, where's the best place to follow you and check all that out?
My hype girl, Elle, has been putting my LinkedIn profile into the chat. Thank you, Al. And Larkin Street is just larkinstreetyouth.org.
Right. And for those who are watching this recording, they can find you on LinkedIn. They can probably find you other places too, but I would really encourage you to take a look at what she's posting there. It's really instructive and thoughtful. And we really do appreciate you. Thank you so much.
That means a lot to me, Jay. Thank you.
I also want to just say how much I appreciate all of you here being a part of this conversation. This has been a very active room, which we love. And this is not the only time this happens here. Okay, so we don't often have people like Gayle, but so we're very fortunate today. But I think that we can have more conversations like this in development. And so I'll hope you'll come back for others. You can visit this conversation we had yesterday that we keep name checking over at DonorSearch.net. A recording of this for the people who couldn't make it today live will be available there probably in the next couple of hours. So you can check all that out again at DonorSearch.net under the resources tab, where we have recordings of our podcast, the webcasts like this one, the CFRE accredited sessions for those who are pursuing that accreditation, and for a registration page to attend sessions in the future. So I hope you'll go and check all that out. And while you're there, of course, if you want to check out what DonorSearch has to say about your donors, I'm sure they would love that too. I know I found that to be helpful, and you might as well. But wherever you find out what you can about your donors, probably not on ChatGPT, as it turns out. It's one of the few things it doesn't do very well. Please do, because in the end, as you said, Gayle, if you can go out there and talk to people as human to human, we can raise more money for the things that are so important to us. So anyway, thank you all very much. Thank you, Gayle. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. Till then, take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for for the invitation again, and thank you for everybody for calling in and listening. I'm very flattered to have been part of this.
It's great to see you.